Okay, so hi everyone, hope you've had a good Christmas and over the lockdown period, but I know we're all getting a bit bored, I suppose, aren't we? So something a bit different really. Was going to do a blog, but decided to do a little video and explain to you what my casts and combinations and teams of flies look like. As we go through the year, ranging from dry fly to sort of washing line, pulling and nymphing, that sort of thing. So I'll try and explain as I go through. It's hopefully we'll get through this lockdown, and in the spring comes along, we'll all be able to cast a line again, hopefully, and enjoy ourselves a bit more than we are now. We're all bored, I suppose, aren't we? We can't get out too much. But here we go. So, as general, normally I start with a 3-fly cast. I'll show you the setup I've got in a second. But if I'm fishing a sort of a nymph setup, then I normally go with a good old 8-pound sight free, or maybe even 10.5 or 10.3, is it? 10.4, sorry, the soft plus bit battered, been knocking around in my box for a bit. Yeah, so those are the two nylons that I use for nymphing and pulling pretty much for the entire year. So on the reservoirs anyway. Obviously if you were doing something a bit more delicate, then that would be enough. But those are the reservoir rainbows. So we'll start off with obviously early season. You know, fish ain't too fussy. Normally they'll take any colour combination you want during that period. You haven't got to be too fussy in that first month, I think, of March, before the spring buzzer really starts to hatch. So, you know, we all catch on any kind of fly then. But it's after that sort of it's important that you get your combinations right and your setup right. And that's when you see some anglers start to dip and some anglers start to do a bit better because they're doing the right things, fishing the right combinations and fishing the right flies. So I'll show a little diagram. This is what I've got. So it's a 3-fly cast, okay? So fly line, this is where I set up. It's 6 foot to the top dropper, and then 5 foot between, and then a 6 foot again to the point. So that's a standard 3-fly cast that I use. I use a 3-turn water knot on the droppers there, and I always wet the knot before I pull it tight there. And our dropper lengths are always about sort of approximately about 7 inches, something like that, and they get a bit shorter as your day goes on, as you change flies or whatever. So that's the standard sort of 3-fly cast. So I'll show you now some different combinations of flies and setups of what we've got to use. So I'll move you down a little bit closer so you can see the flies that I've got on the table here. So just excuse me, I'll just tip this over and hopefully be able to pick up. So when we come down to sort of that's the standard sort of 3-fly cast, maybe it be dries or pulling, really the same sort of the distances work again. So my sort of when spring comes along and the spring buzzer starts to hatch, I'll set up with normally say that a candy booby on the point, and you see the candy booby. This is a cracking little booby. This has been a couple of years in development, and I've been using it the last 2 years really. It's probably been my top point fly. It's the candy booby with a sunburst throat straggle. And that's caught an awful lot of fish for me not only on Chlorette. It did rather well in the Sierra Pairs final on Rutland last September as well. Counted for a couple of big brownies and a nice big rainbow in the final. Not quite enough to pip Rob and Scotty for the first place, but very, very close. But yeah, that's my sort of standard go-to point fly. Now when the buzzers start to appear, you can't beat a combination of that. We've got the booby on the point. I've got a black jowl. I'll pull that a bit closer. That's sort of a pretty standard affair. If you can see that, put my hand there just a bit so you can see a little bit better. There we go. So it's a black jowl, and I like the jungle cock cheeks. in it, and that just always just looks right. If it looks right to you, you'll fish it with confidence, and that'll give you a good setup. A gel bash, I've always said, is a generalisation, is everything to all trout, so that's a great little fly. And I like a red head one on that, because that's always going to stand out from the crowd and draw fish in. The rainbows are very inquisitive, and they'll draw into that, so you'll get fish feeding on buzzers on the red head as well as on the black one. You can sometimes go for 2 black jowls, especially on Chlorette, because all the buzzers are very dark and black on that. But other waters like Chew and things like that, they perhaps you just fish brown jowls, not necessarily black as good as that. But certainly Chlorette, it's black is the go-to colour. So there we go. So that's a standard 3 fly combination that I use during April and perhaps the early part of May, while the spring buzzers are still hatching in good numbers. So that's if they're below. So that's what I'd use for that. Okay, but often in the beginning of the year, like that, when the buzzers are hatching and you've got conditions are right, then they'll often be on the best ways on dries, because they tend to feed on the buzzers, not so much subsurface, but in the surface and on the surface as they hatch off, so as they can corner them there and they get stuck in the surface film and they mop them up. So when I'm fishing dries, in that early period, I tend to turn 6 pound sight free, excellent nylon, strong, and it's thin, and don't get any tangles with it. It's really versatile fluoro. Go to on the point, same setup as the 3 fly cast, 6, 5 and 6 onto the point. Good old standard black quill CDC. You can see that. That's absolutely the #1 fish taker on Chlorette, and that starts in April, and that'll run right the way through until October. That absolutely, they eat that all day long. Sometimes I'll go through about half a dozen of them during the day, because they get chewed up and they get slimed and they just won't float. So go through about half a dozen. That's I think that's a 12, but a 12 and 14 normally. I'll try and make them eat a 12 because you get better hookups, but something down to a 14. I don't really go much smaller than that. But that's the go-to point fly. So that's your point. And then on the droppers, then I've got 2 Bob's bits. You can see a brown one and a black one. I like pearly butts in mine. Don't know why, it just gives it that little bit of extra something. And one little point on the Bob's bits, I never gink them. Always let them just sit in the film or under the film. And it's surprising how many times that you'll just get a fish to drive off. You don't see him rise, but he just takes it subsurface. And I call them bonus fish. Those are brilliant. Those are just on your 2 droppers. Occasionally, if you need something to make something happen, and it doesn't have to be in the autumn, it can be any time in the year. You can fish a hopper on the top dropper, because that'll draw fish in as well. A hopper. So that'll draw fish, whether it be a wet hopper or a dry hopper. If you want to put some gink on it, it'll keep it up. But that'll work as well. You need to make something happen. But if you want to make something happen, and something always does, then the good old daddy long legs. There's some cracking daddies in the Flyshop range. And as you can see, that's the brown one with the foam arse on it. Really good. And then there's an orange version as well, and that's equally good. And that's a little bit more, I think it can draw fish in as well. Okay, so those are absolutely great to make things happen. You can chuck them out, and the fish will sort of, even if there's nothing rising, you'll find that one will come and have a go at that. If it doesn't eat it, it'll have a go, and you get him up and about. So those are great. And sometimes I'll fish one of them on the point and one on the top dropper, and the sunk bits in the middle. That's always a good one, that is. But it always makes things happen, the daddy long legs. Those foam ones do. So that's my basic sort of dry fly, and occasionally, you can swap your point fly around. Gaza Special, that's a good one as well. The one with a little red butt on it as well, a little red holographic butt. That can be a great little fly as well. There's obviously sometimes you see some beetles hatching on Chlorette as well, the cork, when it comes in June. You use a cork pattern then, but it's always got plenty of them about. Yeah, so those are great. But same setup on a 3-fly cast, yeah? So that's what I do on the dry fly. It's rarely that I'll need to go to a single dry fly or anything like that. I just sort of use those bits sunk and just keep the one covering fish as they move along. Back on sort of a washing line to the tactics. When there's not much happening around the surface and you're looking for a sort of a pull-in times, and was on an intermediate, maybe a tip line. But there's a great combination that's worked for me the past 2 or 3 years, really. And that's the black abortion sparkler Booby. That's a great fly, and that had a great success on Rutland as well. You know, absolutely super fly, but just does the business. And obviously it's very visible in the clear water. But it's a great pull-in fly, that is. And couple that with a couple of cormorants as well. You have to excuse a bit of plaster on my finger, cut myself. So this is the green-headed version, and that's in the Flyshop range as well. And that's Russell's cormorants, JC cheeks on that as well. Always a great pattern. And there's a red-headed version as well, and those are good. So the red and the green, you know, hot spots. They'll pick them out. You can fish them pulling, or you can twiddle them around. But 2 great cormorants, and these are my sort of mainstay dropper flies for the most part. But that's a great combination pulling cast with a abortion sparkler Booby and 2 cormorants. Great for pulling. There are stages, as I say, as the season goes on. Sort of midsummer. It did happen for about perhaps 3 weeks in the middle of last year, where it went really warm and the fish sort of dropped in through the layers. And these are the sort of patterns then, obviously, in a combination. This was my top point fly. And this is the black disco elevator Booby. You see that? It's got a little bit of foam under that back in the middle, but it's a short, stumpy little Booby. But it's black, and it's a great little thing. I don't know what it is, the black densities underwater. It's a very dense colour, and it works even if you're fishing deep, sort of Booby basher depth, 15, 20 feet down. That'll catch fish. I couple that with the FNF fire pink and prawn yellow eyes Booby. That's another great one. So that, and I bang a cormorant in the middle of that on that cast. So you've got that setup, then of the cormorant in the middle with a bit of flash on the top. You often get takes on the way up with that during those warmer months. That sort of fly obviously is going to catch you fish whenever there's a lot of stockfish around. That's going to catch you fish pretty much any time during the year, really, if you need that little bit of flash. But you're twiddling, and I had one extremely good day. We had a competition, and it was warm, and we went out. And the first couple of hours I put 10 fish in the boat deep on the elevator Booby. I think it was the only boat that didn't go to the cages that day. I went up to the mouth of Grommen Bay and fished that deep in that bay there. I got a big bag of fish that day. After that, you see, as you approach the warm, after the warm period in the middle of summer, and you get into the autumn period, before you sort of start to get the daddies and stuff like that on, you can often have a period where there's not a lot happening, but the fish are still high in the water. Now, I always think that Fabs tend to work, well, they work for me best after the middle of summer, so after June onwards, work better for me. And these are my 2 favourite Fabs. Good old biscuit Fab. Can't really, that's pretty versatile and works on all water, especially good on Chlorette. That's a little biscuit Fab with a yellow arse and sunburst there. And then this has got a sunburst front, a fire pink back end, and a white tag. That's another really top pattern that works in lots of different waters. That's worked for me very well at Rutland and Chlorette. Really, 2 really good Fabs. And that's when if I'm fishing Fabs, I'd like to use a 4 fly. I fish them very slowly. So I stick 2 jowls then in between that, and I'll show you the 4 fly setup now in a second of how I space them out. But that would be my setup for a 4 fly cast. Yeah, so you can see that that's got 2 fabs and then hang 2 jowls in the centre, just to sort of pick up the fish that don't want those fabs. But fish are very inquisitive. They'll swim around and swim around and swim around and think, I don't really want that fab, but in the end they'll give it a nibble. You have to find that. So I'll just show you the 4 fly setup that I've got. So these are the spacings for the 4 fly, if you can see that. So again, 6 foot from the fly line to the first dropper, and then I drop them down so that there's 3 feet between the droppers there. Can you see 2 sections of 3 feet? So they've got 3 flies fishing very close together, really. And then I like to point a little bit further away for more discerning fish if you can find it. That's 6 foot again to the point. But that's my 4 fly setup. And it isn't very often that I go to 4 flies. Most of the time it's 3. But there are occasions. And sometimes you can chuck a hopper in the mix in that middle to use as well. But those are the sort of combinations I use. There we go. So I hope you liked the little video. And are raring to go for the new season. I know that I'm looking forward to getting out again. I haven't been able to get out at all over the winter months because of the lockdown. Normally get out down to our friends in Elladide, but this year not been able to get down. So hope to see you on the banks. Hope to see you around Chlorette in the spring. So take care and keep safe, everyone. Hope to see you soon.